Chapter 11. Ration Tickets. Jurek spent the next few weeks in the forest. One day he left it, walked to a village, and sneaked into a farmyard in the hope of finding some cheese or a chicken. A farmer stepping out of his outhouse caught hold of Jurek with one hand, while the other was still buttoning his pants. "What are you doing here?" Jurek kept his wits about him. "I'm looking for work." "Good," the farmer said. "My oldest son had a job in the town, and the little ones are too small. I need a coward." Jurek liked the looks of the man. He liked his wife too, a fat, smiling woman. After a few days, his new employer asked him to come with him to the mayor of the village. "The times are hard," he said. "The Germans confiscate everything. What they allow you to keep depends on the number of heads in the family. And you," he said, laughing, "have a head." "But why are we taking the wagon?" Jurek asked. "Because after the mayor fills out a form, we need the signature of the authorities." Jurek climbed onto the wagon. From the mayor's, they continued on their way. Jurek lay in the straw on the bottom of the wagon and fell asleep. He awoke when the farmer stopped his horse. They were in Gestapo headquarters. At first he thought he was having a nightmare. No one had told him that the authorities meant the Gestapo. The young officer was standing in the yard. He hurried over to Jurek with a big grin and yanked him out of the wagon. "So you're back, eh? I know you're a Jew, but this time I'm not going to kill you. You're too smart for that, and I like you." The astonished farmer let himself be consoled with the bounty he was given for turning in a Jew and drove off. The officer handed Jurek to a soldier. The soldier made him take off his clothes, shaved his head, ordered him to bathe, and gave him clean clothes and a pair of shoes. "They're the smallest size I have," he said. "Stuff some rags into them." "Give me back what was in my pockets," Jurek said. The soldier gave him back his slingshot and Mars's magnifying glass. "Where's my knife?" The officer kept it. The soldier took Jurek to a small room with a chair, a table, and a large window looking out on the forest. He had never had his own private room before. Sometimes at night, screams and moans reached it from the basement where Jurek had been. He would awake shivering all over. In the morning it was quiet again. A wagon would come and leave with something beneath its tarpaulin. Jurek became the officer's valet. He cleaned his clothes and brushed his boots. At first, the German wasn't satisfied. He explained that he wanted his boots to be so shiny that he could see his reflection in them. It took Jurek a while to master the art of it. While he was still learning, he was given a slap for every speck of dirt on the boots. In his spare time, he sat in the kitchen with the Polish cook. He ate so much that he developed a paunch. "So you're a Jew?" she asked him one day. "No, I'm not." "I know you are, son. The officer told me." Jurek said nothing. "It's nothing to be ashamed of. Jews are human too." As though to prove it, she took a large piece of chocolate from the closet and gave it to him. It was already summer when the officer summoned Jurek one day and said, "Put on your shoes and come with me." Jurek came back with his shoes on. The officer put him together with a dog in the sidecar of the motorcycle, and they set out. Jurek wondered where he was being taken. Although the German saw the worry in his face, he merely smiled and said nothing. After a while, they left the main road and crossed some fields until they came to a big farm. "The village near here is called Krunam," the German said, parking it in the yard. "I'm bringing you to a girlfriend of mine. You'll work for her. Behave yourself and everything will be all right. And here's your knife back." "Thank you," Jurek said in German. The officer dismounted. A young woman came to greet him. She was wearing boots and her sleeves were rolled up to her elbows. "This is Frau Hermann," the officer said, introducing her to Jurek. He winked. "She's the beautiful wife of Meister Hermann." Jurek didn't know why he was being winked at. The officer said to the woman, "I've brought you a new hand. He's an excellent worker. Look how he polishes my boots." He raised one boot for Panny Hermann to inspect it. She looked at Jurek. "Watch the dog while I'm gone," the officer said. He and Panny Hermann walked off, laughing mercilessly. Jurek stayed on at Panny Hermann's. From her other workers, he learned that she was a Pole of German extraction. Her husband worked for the Germans, and she ran their farm by herself. The Gestapo supplied her with free labor from the ranks of the convicts and debtors. It didn't take Jurek long to learn that you had to toe the line with her. Any slackers could expect a beating from the Gestapo. He did as he was told and carried out orders promptly and carefully. The work he liked best was taking the cows to pasture, because then he was far away from Panny Hermann's demands. The officer came to visit often. Whenever he saw Jurek, he told him to mind his dog. Can I play with it? Jurek asked him one day in German. You know German? A bit. I forgot you once had a dog. Yes, you can throw him a stick and tell him to fetch. Say, good dog, when he brings it back to you. Can you say that in German? Jurek said it. Excellent, Jurek missed Azor. It was threshing time. The Herman's farm was large and mechanized. The threshing was done by a machine with huge wooden wheels, turned by something called a rotary walker. This was made of cogwheels propelled by a shaft operated by a team of horses driven in a circle. A long, wide belt ran from the shaft to the thresher, from which grains of wheat poured like pure gold. Jurek was given a whip and told to keep the horses walking steadily. He was proud of his new job and liked to crack the whip from time to time with a sound like a rifle shot, even though it was rarely necessary. For long hours each day he walked behind the horses, who circled on a track of packed dirt. During lunchtime he hung sacks of barley around their necks and joined the other workers for the meal. On the next to last day of threshing, soon after the lunch break, he heard someone shout a warning behind him. There was no time to make sense of it. His whip, trailing behind him, had gotten caught in the cogwheels, dragging his arm into the machine. Stop the horses! Someone grabbed the horses. Jurek felt an unbearable pain. Someone helped pull his mangled arm from the wheels. He managed to get it into his sleeve before he passed out. From time to time he came to and tried to grasp what was happening. Penny Herman was sitting beside him in a speeding wagon. She tried to keep his arm from being jolted by the bumps. Now and then the blackness that he saw turned to blue, and he understood that he was looking at the sky. Then everything was black again. Jurek was brought to the hospital in Nowy Dwór, a small city on the bank of Wisła. He was placed on an examination table and washed by 2 nurses. Penny Herman went to pay for the hospitalization. When she returned, he was on the operating table. A young surgeon entered. He examined Jurek and said, I'm not operating on this boy. Penny Herman was startled. Why not? Because he's a Jew. He's not a Jew, she shouted. I got him from the Gestapo, and he's my worker. You'll operate him at once. He's a Jew, the doctor insisted. You don't know what you're talking about, Penny Herman shouted. I paid 157 marks and 25 pfennig for him. She made a scene, screaming, sobbing, and threatening to call the Gestapo if anything happened to Jurek. Then she drove off. The doctor refused to back down. He ordered Jurek to be put in the corridor on a stretcher. Jurek lay there in shock. In the moments when he regained consciousness, he felt as though he and his excruciatingly painful body were 2 separate things. As soon as they became one again, he passed out. He no longer knew where he was. His lips mumbled words that had no sound. The next morning, the senior surgeon, Dr. Zurowski, arrived. He saw Jurek in the corridor and exclaimed, What have you done? You could have saved the boy's arm. Jurek was taken to the operating room and anesthetized. His gangrened arm was amputated above the elbow. When he awoke, he rubbed his eyes and tried lifting it. Nothing moved except for a bandaged stump. He broke into bitter tears, and yet by shutting his eyes, he could feel the whole arm again, from his shoulder to his fingertips. He could even feel the whip in his hand. In the first days after the operation, Jurek cried a lot. The nurses fed him and bathed him. They dressed him in a long hospital gown, and he spent hours kneeling by his bed and praying to Jesus and the Virgin Mary, often trying to support himself with an arm that wasn't there. Then he nearly fell. Everything was an overwhelming reminder of his condition. One morning he was woken by a nun. She bent over him and said, Come, Jurek, sit up. I'm here to help you. She took him to the shower and taught him how to wash with his left arm. She showed him how to cross himself and hold a spoon with it. She came to see him every day. There's almost nothing you can't do with one arm, she promised him. Are you sure, sister? Yes, it's only a matter of time and patience. For the first time since the accident, he felt a spark of hope. In his second week in the hospital, Jurek began to roam its rooms and corridors. He visited the different wards, was met by smiles, and even began to smile back. Twice a week, someone came with a food package from Penny Herman's farm. The package was full of good things. Hard-boiled eggs, meat, even cake. Now and then, Penny Herman came herself. She never found Jurek in his bed. He had made friends with many of the patients who knew him and joked with him. One old man taught him to play checkers, and they spent hours at it by bed. Penny Herman laughed when she saw the 2 of them. One day, Jurek passed the maternity ward, peered inside, and saw a familiar face. For a moment, he couldn't place it. It had belonged to the wife of the couple who had turned him into the gazebo. The woman saw him too. Soon the attitude toward him in the hospital had changed. Patients looked away when he passed. A package disappeared before it reached him. The old patient went on playing checkers with him. "Why did they amputate your leg?" Jurek asked him. "I have diabetes. How about you?" "I had a bastard for a doctor," Jurek said. "So I've heard," said the man. "I was told he wouldn't operate you because you're a Jew." "I'm not." The man didn't argue. He just said, "Jurek, the Gestapo will come for you. You know what they do to Jews. Go to Dr. Zawiski. Talk to him." Jurek went to the doctor's office. "Yes, Jurek? How is your arm?" "The one I don't have? I don't know. The one I have is fine." The doctor smiled. "What can I do for you?" "Send me back to the village, doctor." "I can't." "Why can't you?" "I'll tell you the truth. I had a call from the Gestapo. They told me to keep you here until they come for you." Jurek tried planning an escape. Yet, not only did it turn out that there was a guard at the front door, but the nurses had no clothes for him. "We burned them," he was told. "They were full of lice." We waited impatiently for the next visit from the village. When a farmhand brought him a package with regards from Panny Herman, he pleaded, "Take me with you." "Are you allowed to leave?" "I have to leave." "I'll ask the doctor," the farmhand said. "I can't let him go," said Dr. Zawiski. "I have orders from the Gestapo to hold him here." "Doctor," the man said, "I've heard that Jurek is a Jew. That's hard for me to believe, because we got him from the Gestapo. But if it's true, you know what the Gestapo will do." The doctor frowned. "Medically speaking," he said, "he can go." "Then I can take him?" "No, but there's a big window in the bathroom on the floor above us. It faces the back of the building, and I haven't said anything." Jurek and his farmhand went to the corridor. "Wait beneath the window," Jurek told him. "But how will you get down?" "I'll find a way." Jurek climbed the stairs and entered the bathroom. There was a big window, just like the doctor said. He opened it and looked out. The farmhand was below. Looking up, Jurek climbed onto the windowsill and called down, "Catch me!" He jumped. The farmhand caught him. They both fell to the ground. The man rose, picked Jurek up, and ran into the street with him. Noe Dewar was the banks of the Naru River, near where it joined the Wilsla. The farmhand carried Jurek to the river and put him in a rowboat. He freed the mooring line and began to row. They headed downstream and moved quickly. It was a whole new experience for Jurek. The farmhand told him to take the rudder. "Me? It's easy." He took the rudder. "I'll say left, right, or straight ahead. Can you tell your left hand from your right?" "Your right?" The man regretted the question at once, but Jurek just grinned. "Of course I can. It's easy to remember now." Jurek quickly saw what he could steer with one arm. He sat watching the tugboats and small craft on the river. "You're bleeding," the farmhand suddenly said in alarm. The bandages on Jurek's stump were soaked in blood, staining his hospital gown. "Must have hurt myself when I jumped." "Does it hurt?" "No." "Panny Herman will take care of you, don't worry," the farmhand assured him. Panny Herman, too, was alarmed by the bloodstains. She relaxed only when she changed the bandage and saw it wasn't serious. Instead of sending Jurek back to sleep in the barn, she put him in a small room in the house. "You could still mind the cows," she told him the next day. "But when my boyfriend hears that you ran away from the hospital, he'll come looking for you. Now that you only have one arm, I don't know what he'll decide to do with you." She had her seamstress make Jurek a shirt and a jacket with one short sleeve. The missing sleeve felt like an insult. Then she brought him socks and new shoes. "I found shoes your size," she told him. For the first time in his life, Jurek owned a pair of shoes that fit him. Panny Herman made him sit while she laced them. Then she hung a knapsack on his shoulder. "Don't worry," she said, seeing the concern in his eyes. "Everything you had in the pockets of your old pants is in here. There's a bottle of water, too. Do you need anything else?" "Yes," Jurek said. "Some rope, matches, and my stick." Panny Herman sent someone to bring him a length of rope, several boxes of matches, and his walking stick. "God look after you," she said. Jurek kissed her hand and left.